Salutations, and thank you for watching another edition of ARFCOM News. If you're not the kind of person who writes manifestos on a typewriter in a remote shack in the woods, you are probably aware of how the YouTube algorithms tend to prevent content like this from reaching a wide audience. So do us a favor and make new friends at the same time by linking to this video in a reply all to that one aunt of yours who likes to email everyone on her contact list with boomer memes and conspiracy theories. Remember, it's not spam if someone else started it. This week we've got Bloomberg's horrible taste in guns, the end of standard capacity magazine bans, and a plan that just might save the NRA. But before we get started, I'd like to tell you about the simple, home-crafted night vision products brought to you by our friends at TNVC. If you like seeing stuff more than not seeing stuff, take a look at our sponsor, TNVC.com, your source for quality night vision gear to make you the bump in the night. So obviously the big story this week is the Ninth Circuit ruling on standard capacity magazines. And by big, I mean an atomic bomb to the face kind of big. This could be a mortal blow to gun control in this country. The court's position is unequivocal and has broad-ranging implications. Last week, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals upheld the 2017 ruling by Judge Benitez that resulted in Freedom Week, a period of 1 week when the subjects of Californistan could legally buy standard capacity magazines. 5 days after he ruled the law unconstitutional, Benitez decided the state could continue to enforce this unconstitutional law while they appealed his decision. Last week, that appeal failed. A 3-judge panel found that not only did the draconian magazine law fail strict scrutiny, it would still have failed intermediate scrutiny had that been the applicable standard. So yeah, that's kind of like you failed your APFT so bad the drill sergeant tells you that you would have still failed if you were in the next age group. Although Calistanis can't buy standard capacity magazines just yet, the injunction will hopefully be lifted soon. In the meantime, the state would have to prove that somebody bought a magazine before or after Freedom Week to prosecute them successfully, so it's probably fair to say the law is mostly dead. What's next? The state has basically 3 choices. They could just admit they were wrong and stop wasting the taxpayers' money in an attempt to unjustly put people in a cage over having a plastic box that was made on the wrong day. Seriously though, the state can request an en bloc meeting of the active members of the Ninth Circuit, or they could go to the Supreme Court. Either move is risky and expensive for the state. The ideal outcome for the American people is they take it to the Supreme Court and lose, of course, but that's not exactly a sure thing. For now, it means that Californistan's law will eventually be nullified when the injunction is lifted, and it means there is precedent to strike down magazine bans in every other state in the 9th District, so that's kind of a big deal. It is absolutely cause for celebration, but it's also a good time to recognize the folks who got this done. Please take a moment to send a donation to one of the organizations listed here who made this victory possible. These guys are the real pipe hitters of the 2A movement. They aren't spending your donations on junk mail and advertisements in glossy print mags. They spend that money on lawyers, street-fighting gladiator lawyers. So seriously, pause the video and send them some money. Did you donate? I knew you could. And the good news keeps rolling in. We've been reporting record gun sales every month here, and oligarch Michael Bloomberg's mouthpiece, The Trace, has invested significant effort in creating a tool for us to gloat about those numbers in great detail. It has some sharp-looking graphics that make it easy for you to correlate spikes in sales with events. There's even a scorecard where you can sort states by high score or most improvement. Unfortunately, the score isn't adjusted per capita, so Texas, unsurprisingly, takes the top score, but Michigan turns in an impressive 402% increase in sales over July of last year. Give them ganders a hander, everybody. Great work, even if it was probably all just 3 guys in the UP. I'm proud to say that Arizona ranked 14th in overall sales and 11th most improved, ahead of several other more populous states in both categories. I know, if you ain't first, you're last and all that, but I think it's still pretty good. How did your state do? Now, I know this data isn't really intended to be used as a scoreboard. It's supposed to produce gasps and clutching of pearls, because the trace is quite literally the propaganda arm of Everytown. I wasn't being hyperbolic when I referred to them as Bloomberg's mouthpiece. Last year, the same folks breathlessly reported that 8M3 was used in the El Paso shooting. Well, not that breathlessly. At almost 1,000 words, they had a lot to say about very little. They also embedded one of my old gel test YouTube videos, not realizing that would allow me to inject my own propaganda onto their page. It's still there. If you Google trace and 8M3, it will be the first result. It warms my cockles. It really does. The Trace also recently reported that Everytown is attempting to purchase hundreds of Jimenez pistols. Jimenez arms sprouted from the ashes of Brico, itself an evolution of Jennings. Under any label, I feel pretty comfortable in saying they were garbage guns, and that's not something I do much. Brico lost a $24 million lawsuit because their pistol was defective and paralyzed a 7-year-old boy. The only time I've ever had an unintentional discharge was a Jennings .22 that fired when the slide closed on a live round in the chamber while my finger was nowhere near the trigger. So it's not like I'm sad to see them go, but Paul Jimenez tried to revive them as Jimenez Arms. Then the ATF claimed the guns made by Jimenez were purchased by bad criminal guys who illegally transferred the guns to bad guys, even though Jimenez shipped the guns to an FFL holder. Whether or not Jimenez Arms did anything illegal, they were sued by Kansas City, Missouri, and Everytown, which forced them into bankruptcy. So it's been a long and rocky road for them. And now Everytown wants to buy their remaining inventory of 340 pistols and 629 pistol frames for $12,571. That's about $13 each, or $37 if you only counted the complete guns. Either way, that's more than I'd pay for a Jennings, but I guess they're getting a pretty good deal as those things go. And before we move on, I just want to tip my hat to the journalistic integrity it took for Tabitha Mueller at the Nevada Independent to label Everytown as a gun safety organization and reference investigative reporting from The Trace, which, as I believe I may have mentioned, is nothing more than the propaganda arm of Everytown. Let me say that again. This reporter had the audacity to write a story focusing on the investigative reporter that Everytown's media wing did about Everytown. You see, that's why I believe it's time we open a national dialogue about common sense media control. Relax. Nobody is trying to take your granddad's local newspaper. But high-capacity assault blogs and unregistered digital editions like the Nevada Independent are weapons of mass disinformation. We need to fund detailed studies of the competencies, biases, and even literacy of these so-called journalists. Some of them might even be communists. Last week, we reported about the lawsuit that just might take out the 800-pound gorilla, and this week, I get to tell you about the crocodile tear-stained letter Wayne penned where he tells us of his hard but principled decisions to use the hard-earned dollars donated by members to fund his lavish lifestyle. He seems earnestly sorry that he was caught with his hand in the cookie jar, again. While I have no pity for senior leadership, I am saddened their misdeeds might spell an end to the NRA. Like an old stinky fishy boat, I have some emotional attachment to the listing old gal. So if there is any way to salvage the organization while excising the cancer from the leadership, I'm all for it. Hell, I might even buy a membership again. I do kind of miss the armed citizen section of American Rifleman. That's why an Alabama attorney named George Douglas is urging NRA members to intervene in the case. Douglas says it's not likely that either the New York Attorney General or the NRA would win flat out. He believes it is more likely that some sort of negotiated settlement will occur where senior leadership squanders even more of the donor's money to appease the plaintiff and negotiate a position that leaves the NRA weaker and senior leadership without any real consequence. Basically, intervention is a legal procedure where a party is likely to be adversely affected by a judgment but doesn't have representation in the courtroom. It would mean that in addition to the state's legal team and the NRA leadership's legal team, the NRA members would have their own representation to fight for their own interests. For example, if the allegations are true, then the members are the wronged party, not the state of New York. The proper resolution is not that the NRA is dissolved, but rather that the named parties pay back what they took, and it is the members who are due compensation in this suit, not the state of New York. Further, he argues there is profound and irreconcilable conflict of interest between the senior leadership and the members of the NRA, such that the NRA's members deserve separate legal counsel not chosen by senior leadership and the NRA. So what should you do? Well, first, you should forward this open letter to everyone. We'll link it in the description, of course. But the idea here is that everyone who's an NRA member and has the financial and legal resources to do so should intervene in the case. What the little people like you and I need to do is to encourage them to do it. So tell all your rich buddies to call their lawyers. This is where the montage should kick in. Phone calls, 80s rock. I'm so excited, I just can't hide it. Come on, guys, let's get together and save that rec center! Next up, the secret phrase of the day is two to the chest, face gets the rest. First person to post two to the chest, face gets the rest in the YouTube comments gets a free Teespring shirt. May the odds be ever in your favor. Over in Virginia, one of Governor Blackface's new infringements, aka the one handgun a month law, resulted in over 1,100 denials in its first month. Those denials made up the majority of the 1,800 denials reported by the Virginia Firearms Transaction Center for July. Many buyers thought that purchases made prior to July 1st, when the law took effect, wouldn't count against them. Turns out, it was retroactive. The new law prohibits any person who is not a licensed firearms dealer from purchasing more than one handgun in any 30-day period and establishes such an offense as a Class 1 misdemeanor. Virginia had a nearly identical law in place from 1993 until 2012 when it was repealed by the Republican-controlled state legislature. So if you're in Virginia, make sure you vote for the most pro-gun candidate in every election, every time, especially primaries. We need this cycle to come around one more time. Let's get this law repealed again. In New Mexico, two Albuquerque city councilors, Isaac Benton and Diane Gibson, are pushing for a revote on a New Mexico constitutional amendment, specifically Article 2, Section 6 of the Right to Keep and Bear Arms provision. They don't like the pesky preemption clause to the state's constitution, and they think they have enough calisthenics to rip out the preemption clause via popular vote. Preemption shouldn't even need to be explicit. Part of the purpose of having a constitution in the first place is to prevent the tyranny of the majority. It is intended to draw strict limits around government so 51% of the people can't pass laws to oppress a minority. This is like first day civic stuff here, guys. Of course, the state constitution preempts municipalities from passing illegitimate laws that infringe on the rights of the people. In other news, water is wet and Jake Paul is a douche. But New Mexico's constitution does have an explicit preemption clause, and that didn't stop Mayor Tim Keller from banning guns in Albuquerque parks and recreation facilities via an administrative handwave in June after the Baca shooting. But we don't have to just let these authoritarian enthusiasts run wild. The council is set to vote on the issue next month, and according to the city's website, your views and opinions are very important to the city councilors, and they look forward to hearing from you. Well, shoot, since that's the case, head on over to the link in the description where you can contact all 9 city council members simultaneously, or pause the video right now and call Isaac and Diane's policy analysts at 505-768-3186 and 505-768-3136 respectively. As always, be courteous to the person taking the call. He or she may not be opposed to gun rights, and even if they are, berating them isn't going to change their mind. Just politely state that you are opposed to the ban on guns in parks, the attempt to undermine state preemption, or any other infringement on the right of the people to keep and bear arms. This is the way. Well, brave traveler, that's the end of today's quest. If you like what we do and want to help us keep doing it, please share this video everywhere you can, because you know YouTube won't. And if you like seeing stuff more than not seeing stuff, you can support us by supporting our sponsor, TNVC.com, your source for all the toys you need to make you the bump in the night. I love you.